The mission was supposed to be simple escort a captured courier to the extraction point and leave the valley before sunset. Lieutenant Brooks had done runs like this a dozen times, but something felt wrong the moment they entered the narrow canyon. The air was too still, the shadows too deep, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The SEAL platoon moved in a tight staggered formation, boots crunching softly on the rocky trail as the walls rose high on both sides like towering, jagged tombstones. Then the valley exploded. A deafening crack split the silence, followed by the rattling thunder of heavy machine guns opening from the ridgelines. The canyon walls lit up with muzzle flashes, dozens of them, spitting fire from well-hidden nests. Bullets tore into the dirt around the SEALs, kicking up clouds of dust and forcing the men to dive behind whatever scraps of cover the terrain offered. Someone shouted, "RPG!" just as a rocket screamed down from above, detonating so close. It hurled debris across the trail and knocked two operators off their feet. Brooks instantly realized the awful truth. This wasn't a random skirmish. This valley had been prepared. Every firing angle, every choke point, every high point had been precalculated to trap them like prey. The enemy wasn't just attacking, they were hunting. The SEALs tried to return fire, but their angles were terrible. The ridges were too high, the nests too buried, and every time someone poked out to shoot, the enemy unleashed another wave of suppressing fire. Radios crackled with static, confirming their worst fear. Their primary comms were jammed. The valley walls distorted signals, and the enemy was using electronic interference to keep them blind. Ammunition dwindled fast as the team held their positions, trying to stabilize their casualties while scanning for any escape route. But the canyon floor narrowed ahead and collapsed behind them from earlier explosions. They were boxed in with nowhere to advance and nowhere to retreat. In the middle of the chaos, a backup emergency device blinked weakly, a last-ditch beacon most pilots ignored. But not everyone. Somewhere miles away, an off-duty A-10 pilot picked up that faint encrypted ping. Inside the valley, surrounded, bleeding, and pinned under relentless fire, the SEALs didn't know it yet. But their only chance of survival had just awakened. On the far edge of Bagram Air Base, Captain Lara Havake Halle sat alone inside. A quiet maintenance hangar, staring at the A-10 she hadn't flown in months. Her right shoulder still carried a faint stiffness from the crash that nearly killed her. A doctor told her she was lucky to survive. Command told her she was unfit for combat. The Air Force told her to stand down, heal, and wait. But no one understood how much she missed the sky, the roar of the engines, the weight of the controls, the purpose that came with every mission. She kept her flight helmet on a workbench nearby, refusing to put it away, because a part of her believed the sky wasn't done with her yet. She was tightening a strap on the helmet when an urgent alert flashed on her tablet. A faint emergency beacon. Encrypted military grade. SEAL origin. Her heart jumped as the ID code blinked across the screen. Bravo 6, a team she knew. A team she owed her life to. Months ago, they had pulled her out of a burning wreck after her crash. She remembered the pain, the smoke, the screaming metal end. The SEAL who grabbed her hand and dragged her out before the ammunition cooked off. She never repaid that debt. She never got the chance. Now they were trapped in a kill zone. Lara didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward her A-10 as if the decision had already been made days ago. A crew chief rushed in front of her, shouting, "Ma'am, you're not cleared to fly," orders came from command. But Lara brushed past him, climbed the ladder, and dropped into her seat with a force that made her shoulder burn. "This isn't a sortie," she muttered, flipping switches. "This is a rescue." The engines thundered awake, echoing through the hangar. Mechanics cursed, radios crackled with warnings, and officers demanded she stand down. She locked the canopy, blocking them all out. For the first time in months, her hands touched the familiar grip of the stick, and something inside her aligned again. She eased the throttle forward. The massive A-10 rolled out into the blazing sunlight. dust swirling around it as if the desert itself was rising to witness her return. Havoc was airborne moments later, unauthorized, unplanned, unstoppable, rocketing toward the valley, where the SEALs were running out of time. Lara descended through the mountains, with the nose of her A-10 pointed toward the narrow valley where the distress beacon pulsed like a weak heartbeat. The terrain was brutal, jagged ridges, steep drops, and air currents that slammed against her wings. She flew low enough that her landing gear almost kissed the mountaintops, weaving through the rocky maze with a precision she had no right to still possess after months on the ground. As she neared the valley mouth, her sensors lit up. Heat signatures, dozens of them. Muzzle flashes clustered in rows. Dust clouds rising from explosive impacts. The unmistakable chaos of a full-scale ambush. Her jaw tightened. "Bravo 6, hold on," she whispered, even though they couldn't hear her. "Havoc's coming." Down below, the SEALs were nearly invisible beneath the storm of fire. They had taken shelter behind a fractured boulder, pinned so tightly they couldn't lift their heads. From her cockpit, Lara saw the danger they couldn't. High ridgelines crawling with fighters, RPG teams shifting positions, a mounted gun waiting to shred anyone who moved an inch. It was a kill box one designed to annihilate even elite warriors. But the enemy had forgotten one thing. Warthogs were built for this. Lara rolled her plane sideways, slicing into the canyon with a terrifyingly low dive angle. The moment her wings leveled, she squeezed the trigger. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon answered with its iconic roar, a deep, metallic growl that shook the entire valley. A stream of depleted uranium rounds tore across the ridgeline like a chainsaw made of thunder. Enemy fighters scattered. Sandbags erupted. A machine gun nest disintegrated under the first burst. The SEALs looked up. Disbelief etched across their dirt-smeared faces. Someone whispered, "No way. She's actually flying again." Lara made another pass, then another, threading the canyon as if she were dancing between mountains. Every run smashed enemy positions with surgical precision. RPG operators barely lifted their weapons before her fire ripped through them. Snipers vanished in clouds of shattered rock. Even the wind seemed to fall silent, replaced by the savage heartbeat of her cannon. For the first time since the ambush began, the SEALs had breathing room. The valley that felt like their grave suddenly felt like Hope. And above them, carving through the smoke and dust like an avenging ghost, Lara Hawley proved she wasn't just back. She was unstoppable. Lara swung the A-10 into a sharp climb, banking hard as the smoke-filled canyon rushed beneath her. From her altitude, she could see what the SEALs couldn't. The enemy wasn't finished. They were regrouping, dragging out heavier weapons from concealed caches, tripod-mounted heavy guns, crates of RPGs, and bodies moving with frantic coordination. Worst of all, she spotted the metallic glint of something far more dangerous, a stolen, shoulder-fired anti-air missile system being assembled on a ridge. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation. "Not today," she muttered. Diving again, the canyon walls blurred as she dropped back into the kill zone. The enemy team scrambled to lock onto her, the missile operator lifting the launcher and fumbling with the trigger. Lara timed her run with the precision of a surgeon. She fired a burst of cannon fire that danced across the ridge, erupting in a spray of dust and shattered rock. The operator vanished in the explosion, the missile tube rolling uselessly down the slope. Below her, the SEALs began to move. Encouraged by the sudden silence and enemy fire, LT Brooks called for the squad to push forward the extraction point. But the path was still a gauntlet, snipers shifting position, hidden fighters waiting in pockets of shadow, and choke points ready to trap them again. Lara saw every threat from above, tracing their movements through dust and heat signatures. She dropped flares to mark sniper nests, guiding the SEALs around ambush they hadn't detected yet. When an enemy squad tried to flank the team from a higher ledge, she cut them off with a strafing run so close to the ground that her wings scraped the dust. Each maneuver took a toll. Her fuel gauge slipped lower. Her ammunition count shrank with every burst. And her shoulder, still not fully healed, ached with each violent turn. But Lara ignored the pain. She wasn't flying for medals or orders. She was flying for the men who had once carried her broken body out of a burning wreck. The sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the valley as the enemy prepared one last desperate push. Lara circled overhead, engines rumbling like a storm waiting to strike. She knew the SEALs were almost out. She also knew the enemy wasn't done, and she was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant burning through the last of her fuel, ammo, and strength to keep them alive. Night had begun to bleed into the valley, turning the canyon into a maze of shadows where danger could hide anywhere. The SEALs were sprinting toward the extraction zone, lungs burning, boots slamming against the loose gravel as enemy fighters surged from every ridge. T-Brook shouted orders between breaths, but even he knew the truth. They were seconds from being overwhelmed again. Lara circled above them, her A-10 limping through the sky like a wounded predator refusing to fall. Warning lights flashed angrily across her cockpit. Fuel critically low. Ammo almost empty. Engine temperature climbing. She had pushed the aircraft beyond anything maintenance crews would consider sane. But she wasn't thinking about regulations. She was thinking about the men below, the ones who once dragged her from the jaws of death. And now they were cornered again. Her targeting display flickered as she scanned the slopes. She spotted the enemy commander, a tall, broad-shouldered fighter directing his men with ruthless precision. Under his command, dozens of gunmen converged on the SEALs' position. If that wave hit the team before the birds arrived, there would be nothing left to save. Lara inhaled slowly. One final run. One final chance. She lowered the A-10's nose and pushed the throttle forward. The engines groaned, metal rattling from the strain, but the aircraft responded like it knew its mission mattered. Wind screamed past her canopy as she dropped altitude fast, skimming just above the canyon floor. The enemy spotted her and opened fire with everything they had: machine guns, RPGs, anything that could reach the sky. Tracer rounds streaked upward. An RPG blasted near her right wing. Shrapnel tore across the fuselage. But Lara held course, gripping the stick until her knuckles turned white. When she reached the kill zone, she unleashed the last of her ammunition in a long, devastating burst. The cannon's roar rolled through the valley like a god's anger. Men dove for cover too late. Enemy barricades erupted. The commander's final assault collapsed under a rain of fire and shattered earth. The SEALs stopped running and watched the mountains shake. Seconds later, Lara pulled up barely as her engine sputtered. But behind her, the skies filled with the thumping blades of incoming Black Hawks. Extraction had arrived. The SEALs climbed aboard, battered but alive. Before they lifted off, Brooks looked down at the smoking valley and whispered, "Havoc saved us again." When Lara landed back at base, her A-10 was scarred, scorched, and full of holes, but she walked away standing tall. That night, every unit on base spoke her name with the same reverence. The ghost pilot had returned and changed the fate of an entire platoon.